Even though I represent the clinical side of the world, I'm not going to talk so much clinically today. Hopefully in the future there will be an opportunity for some additional clinical insight to be offered, and we'll probably get some therapists that are probably much more experienced than me to come and talk to you about that. But I want to talk to you about something that I think hits both sides of our intersection at mental health and education, and that is looking at leadership. Because as we talk about safe relationships and that being a foundational building block for what we do at Momentous and really creating safe environments, that's a flow between both disciplines. It's important for us to build safe relationships, to have any process of change occur in the counseling relationship. And in your classrooms, there has to be a safe relationship and a connection there for kids to really optimally reach their goals for achievement. So I want to talk about the approach to both of those disciplines from the lens of leadership, or from the hat of leadership. So, since I've been here 90 days, I have done all this extensive stuff, like sitting at all of these trainings that Rhonda's done, and just listen, walking around in your classrooms and listening to people on the tours, the administrators talk, and then when we do the Momentous for educators and we kind of debrief and get a chance to hear what's going on with folks as they're talking, I continue to hear these themes about challenges with student behavior, how to motivate students, how to engage them. The big one is discipline, of course. And so I've been thinking about this and going, wow, the theme that continues to come up in my mind is that these are leadership issues, that these are issues that can be addressed from a leadership lens. They can't all be solved, but at least we can begin our approach if we are looking at each day as that we're not just educators or we're not just clinicians, but really that we have our leadership hat on. I think it changes the game a little bit, changes the conversation, and it changes the scope of what we do on a daily basis. So, I am aware that teachers wear all these different hats, all right? So, what are some of the hats that y'all wear other than teacher? Mother. They're recording me, so I'm going to have to try to get my hair back. Daughter. I'm going to run out of hats, so I'm going to take them on. Wife. Okay. In the classroom, who are you to the kids on a daily basis other than just teacher? A mentor. A friend. Starting over. A counselor. Uh-oh. Couldn't manage that. Oh, I popped that open.
A nurse, that's a good one.
A nurse, referee. Anybody a mediator?
Mediators.
Awesome. So you guys wear so many different hats in your role as teacher. But I would like to challenge your thinking today for you to consider that the primary hat that you wear is your leader hat. Because no matter what you do as a teacher, no matter where you go in the community, if you see your kid at school, if you see your kiddo at a basketball game, if you see him at a grocery store, you are always a leader. As a matter of fact, when I listen to the kids that I have that come in counseling, some of the kids that have been in school before, they don't talk about teachers from the framework of teachers. They talk about descriptions of teachers, but they do it in the framework of a leadership framework. So, we're going to talk a little bit today about the basis for a leadership approach to what it is that we do on a daily basis. I want to talk to you about two different leadership styles as we talk about our approach to the classroom, so that each day when you go into that classroom, you're not just that teacher, but you've got your leader hat on. And then we'll look at some of the principles and practices of what permission leadership is, because that's our desired leadership. So what really is leadership? Leadership really is about influence. And when I think about teacher, it's inherent in your calling, really, because most of you feel called to this field. I would venture to say there's probably nobody in here at Momentous, because it probably, by now we would have known. If you had come in here just to try this profession out and just see if it was going to work out, that's not most people's story in here. Most of you came into this field because you felt called to it. You wanted to make a difference. And leadership is a very serious responsibility. And that's why when you approach your classroom and listening to some of the comments from other teachers, I wonder if they walked in their classroom every day and they thought, I'm a leader. I wonder, and I have influence, and I have a grave responsibility, because these kiddos' lives are in my disposal. They're people that I get a chance to impact. I have a huge influence on them. I can impact their character. I can help to adjust and change behavior based upon what I do as a leader. So I have been investing in these kids. I have to make an investment in these kids. That's a lot different than I'm coming to school every day, I'm here to teach, and I want to see my kids learn all of the concepts. I want to see them pass the test. I want to see them do well on the STAR. So the leadership approach gives us a higher purpose and a higher vision. I like the quotes by John Maxwell and Kim Blanchard, and just so you know, these are leading experts in the field of leadership and motivation. These are folks that have multiple books out. John Maxwell is my favorite. He has over about 50 books out that talk about leadership. But ultimately, as leaders, our goal is to influence. That's the bottom line. That's the game-changing piece of being teacher and leader. So, what is the goal of leadership? Well, it's not just to have influence. I mean, there's a purpose behind it. Our goal as we approach these kiddos is not just the academic piece, but if we're leading, we're trying to get those kiddos to go somewhere, right? Because otherwise, there's like an old saying that says, if you're leading and nobody's following, then you're just walking. Right? Because leadership inherent in the word indicates and insinuates that somebody is following. And our goal as leaders, as clinicians, as educators, is that we want to meet people where they are and we want to take them to the next place. And we want to unleash that potential that they have, and we want that to impact the greater good. Because there is bad leadership too. So the focus is unleashing that potential and ensuring that we are influencing for the greater good. So, my life changed tremendously as a Maxwell. And the other book is this book here, 5 Levels of Leadership. And what I said after I read those books is, if I could have talked to my early professional self, what would I say that I would do differently? I would say, because my first job in the social work field, I was a case manager. So case manager is kind of like the entry level. It's kind of like the bottom rung. Most people really kind of just go, if you call them and you say, hey, I'm Tina, I'm a case manager, they don't call you back. That's just the way that it goes. But if I could talk to my case manager self, I would tell myself, because of the fact that you have the ability to impact character development, you have the ability to have an influence on behavior, you are a leader. I wouldn't have just been that person that connected individuals with resources and then went home at the end of the day. I would have approached my day totally different, because when I had the opportunity to engage those clients, I would have taken the time to connect in a different way, realizing that my experience with them goes far beyond them hitting that resource in the community. Because if that resource doesn't work out, but we had an opportunity to build relationship and have an exchange that could have an influence on them for long term, that's a much different experience than if I'm just providing resource information. Technically, they could go online and get that anyway, right? So let me go back, and we just want to talk about the first 2 positions. So John Maxwell's model for leadership is based upon 5 different levels, and they are stair steps, because Rhonda always makes that distinction when we do training about the social-emotional health model and our building blocks for Momentous, but this actually is a stair step model. The first 2 steps are leadership styles. The last 3 are achievements and accomplishments that those styles help others get to. The first level is position. The second level is permission, so we'll talk about those in a little bit detail. Ultimately, both of those leadership styles should result in production. So you guys have lesson plans, you have requirements that the children have to meet. They've got to pass tests, they've got to achieve a certain score. A lot of teachers we talk to are really nervous about that. So both of those levels can get to production, but not both of those levels can produce people development or pinnacle. So people development is about when you are at the stage in your leadership where you are developing other leaders. So you're mentoring somebody. You're not just teaching in the classroom, but you are mentoring either another colleague or other kiddos. Pinnacle level is where the leaders that you've mentored and developed are now developing other leaders. And that's the way that we impact the world. We continue to create leaders. So let's talk a little bit about position, because one of the things that I heard, we had a teacher at one of the tours who was with a charter school. And so she was sharing about one of the schools that was under her leadership and her guidance. And she said, when you go into the school, everybody they're achieving their benchmarks, they're reaching the scores that they need to. But there's like no joy in the school. People just kind of just are in there just hanging out, walking through the halls. You don't hear a lot of excitement and enthusiasm. And so I began to think in my mind, and I mentioned this because Sandy was in that meeting, and I thought, wow, that's a leadership thing. And I wonder if that's an individual or a school that's leading from position. So let's talk a little bit about position, because position is kind of like when you're in a race. You're at the starting line. That's what a position is. You became a teacher, so you got a title, right? I'm the director of clinical training, so I have a title, and they gave me a job description, kind of, because we're kind of just like, figuring it out a little bit. That's what we're trying to do. And so that is the starting point, right? But position leadership is not meant to stay there. We're not meant to just operate out of our position. We're meant to take that a step further. What happens with position leadership is we begin there, but the danger is that if we stay there and we only operate every day out of the fact of, this is what I'm supposed to do with this kid, this is what I'm supposed to get as an outcome, this is what time I come to work, this is what time I leave, this is what I give while I'm there. If we solely operate out of a position standpoint, then we really don't get the fullness that's in those kiddos. We really don't unleash that potential because we haven't invested beyond the fact that we have the title. So here are a few descriptors of positional leadership. I do have words on my slides. I know that I'm learning how to use just pictures, but because the clinician in me keeps rearing up, I have to have a few words. Is that okay, Rhonda? Okay, awesome. So, rights focused. We talk about position. Again, the danger is that if you stay in the mode of coming to work and it's simply just about what you have to do and what you have to accomplish, lots of times we end up operating from a framework of, this is the position I have, this is what these kids are supposed to do, and they're supposed to do it because I'm the teacher and they're the kiddo. They're supposed to just go along with it. It's that whole compliance thing. And so often that focus is about the rights that that person has by virtue of their position. So, title versus leader. Positional leaders often lead based upon their title. They are the people that have to remind you that they're in charge of the room. We had an interview for a position on a project that I have with Momentous, a middle school project where we're going to do some research and create an intervention for middle schoolers. Pretty exciting, it is. So we interviewed a particular individual and we asked her a question about, how do you handle discipline? What happens? Give us a situation where you've had to handle a particular discipline issue. And so she told us what she did to handle the issue, and she said, I needed to make sure that that kid knew that I was in control. And so we kind of just nodded, and each of us looked out of the corner of our eyes and thought, okay, wonder how that worked out. But position leaders often work from a framework that it's about their right to be the leader, to be in charge. It's out of their job description. And what happens is the result of that is that we have kiddos and we have people that they don't give their best. They only give the least. And the reason is because the position leader doesn't tap into the fact that they need to build the relationship with those kids. It's really about them using their title to get things done. And that produces, oftentimes, we say rules minus relationship equals rebellion. So we have folks that feel like they have to follow. They're just doing it because they know they got to get it done. They know that they got to go to school, so they might as well do what you tell them to do. But it doesn't produce a kiddo who is fully present in the moment. They're absent emotionally. A lot of times, my mom used to say, we owned a daycare for several years, and my mom would say about particular kids, she said, yeah, they are sitting down on the outside, but they're standing up on the inside. And so you can see that visual of kids who, when they have positional leadership, they're right here. They may be complying for that moment, but they're not fully present. And these are kiddos that are disillusioned. There's nothing beyond the position. The positional leader doesn't take them beyond that classroom in that moment. So that's the positional leader. Permission is where we want to get on that leadership level. And why is that important? Because as a leader, you are the CEO of your classroom. And I hear oftentimes in some of the conversations that we've had with some of the teachers, it's like, well, we really can't do this because our school isn't in favor of that. You know, this isn't something that our culture allows. If I'm trying this, then I have people who tell me to do something different. And I would simply say, when you lead by permission, you have the ability to set that climate for your classroom. We get a chance to do that in our sessions. And so what permission leadership looks like, it's all about the relationship. Sorry, I'm standing in your way. It's all about the relationship. So instead of it being rights focused, it's relationship focused. Now, what does it mean to lead with permission? I know that sounds weird that you got to get permission from the kiddos to let you teach them and lead them. But isn't it interesting in a relationship that we get a chance to choose who and when we let in for a trust-based relationship? We get to do that. Kiddos do that as well. And so a permission leading teacher and clinician, they're going to focus on building relationship because they know that if they're going to get anything done, if they're going to unleash that potential, if they're going to take those kiddos somewhere, that they have to build a safe relationship and a safe foundation. So a relationship-focused permission leader, they think others first. It's not about their title or their position. It's about those kiddos. They are strategically, intentionally thinking about how can I build relationship with these kids in my class. They build trust and they're likable. People don't follow people they don't like. How many times have you guys come to work and been at a particular job, not here, of course, but another workplace, you're like, oh my God, I can't wait to go work for that person, but I cannot stand it. It's just, I'm dying to get to work today. I already know we're going to get into it. I'm just super pumped about that. It's going to be a tough day. They're going to have all these rules, and we don't do that. Well, guess what? Kiddos don't do that either. And kids don't come to counseling sessions that they don't feel good about the counselor. They don't come. And if they start off, they don't stay. So likable and people that reflect love, a loving nature, a caring nature. So here's the difference between position and permission. You get the kiddos that want to follow. They want to do it. It's not that they've got to be dragged along. How do you engage students? Just be relational, build trust, be likable, seek to build that relationship, and the kiddos will come along. It's not going to happen right off, especially with those kiddos that have had those experiences where that trust has been broken over and over again, or they're coming to the classroom with you and they're really going to be testing to see whether or not you're the real deal as you appear to be. They feel valued, they're invested in the process, they show up in the classroom, they cannot wait to be a part, and they're very hopeful, and that's what we want for future leaders, right? So, let's take a few minutes and just in your tribes, before we go on to really looking at the basis of permission leadership and getting to more detail, just based up on that framework of a leadership approach to your classrooms, talk with each other in your tribe and just talk about what does that feel like for you? Have you even thought about leadership as a way to approach your classroom on a daily basis? And if so, where do you think you fall between that positional leadership and that permission leadership? Okay, so just have a little conversation here real quickly, and then we'll share out, and then we'll wrap up.
I'm just curious if like maybe it could be a little bit of both, because I feel that there are some kids that you might bump heads with more. You're trying to be positioned as like, I'm the teacher, this is what it is, yada yada, and then there's some who you build a relationship with, and it's great permission, and it's just I don't know. So I was just that was my whole two cents. Like I'm just curious if maybe you can do a little bit of both.
Absolutely, you definitely can. And
I like to be more permission. So.
yes, because that's our next level. I mean, we're always trying to take it to the next level, right? So there's a process. I think part of it is just understanding the difference between the two and working to that point where you can lead out more with that permission and that relationship-based interaction. Anybody else?
For me, I think permission is always the best. I think I literally, I mean, there are some kids who push back, and I think last year to my special friend who really pushed back, and I had to come in with a mindset of how am I going to win you over today? How am I going to get you to think that I am all for you, that I am your cheerleader?
Yeah.
And so I think just having that mindset of like, Lord knows I can't like you every day, but I can love you. That is
Right.
a choice. And
Yes.
how can I just win you over?
Yes.
That's kind of like the place that I have to be when I have real difficult kids. How can I win
Yeah.
you over?
Such a great approach, and that's why I think just thinking of it in the terms of I'm leading this whole effort. I mean, I'm teaching, but I'm really a leader, so I'm modeling this, and I have the ability to influence this outcome and this kiddo in the process. So how do I really care for that? So let's look a little deeper into permission leadership. The first thing is ask the why, not chase the why, but ask the why. So why permission? Why are you in leadership? Why do you come to work? I think just building that framework, why do it? Why are you in the classroom that you're in for this season of your life and your teaching career at Momentous? What's the why for you? Because when you look at the why, it produces a different way to approach how you go about those tasks and really kind of building the relationship. So I just brought this is what I have on my desk. I've had this on my desk at multiple offices because I've had a lot of different titles, but I've been a leader in every one of those roles since I got this information. So this basically just says, I am positioned by God to influence. I live today with tomorrow in mind. I am poised for the challenges, knowing that my decisions will matter. I will make an impact. This reminds me every single day of what I'm really supposed to be doing in any role I take on. Yes, I'm the Director of Clinical Training at Momentous, but more than anything, I'm an influencer. So why am I here at this particular time? It changes the way that I approach every day. Influence is the effect of having the ability to impact character, development, and behavior. So my influence helps me to build trust. But when I build trust, it also strengthens my influence. So I lead out with my influence. That's how we usually do. People don't just decide they're going to trust you and like you if there isn't something that's already there that draws them into you and into the connection. So, and Kimberly kind of touched on this already, but when I think about my influence, how I approach my week and my day, and really my career, is with this question: how will I influence my kiddos toward their best selves and the greater good? You can put that alongside with your lesson plans, because you know you got to get some outcomes, right? Because production is at next level, and no matter who you are as a leader, you got to produce, whether you're a positional producer or a permissional producer. But thinking about how you're going to influence your kiddos in the process, what does that look like? So, next, talk about the principles of permission leadership. So we asked the why, and now we need to know the what's. Okay, so the what's are, what are the values, what are the core beliefs behind being a leader that seeks permission and leads relationally? There are really 3 principles that I think stand out above all the ones that I've read and experienced. Value people. That's the very first one. Because whatever you value, you will prioritize that. It's interesting that we're in the people business. We are in the little people business, Crystal. The little people just look a little bit different. We are in the people business, but it's amazing that I hear and see so much information that reflects that there isn't a value on those little people. Rhonda did an observation the other day, and she was in a classroom, and we talked about it, and it was just, we debriefed it. It was so crazy, but there was a teacher who was in a circle, and she was, I guess, correcting a kiddo didn't do something right, and she said, "Goodbye," like boop, like you're dismissed. And I thought, does that show value for a kiddo? That it's almost like you're non-existent to me. We have to prioritize people, and if we value them, we'll prioritize them. The second principle is trust is a must. Trust is a must. If we're going to build foundational safe relationship, we have to gain the trust of our kiddos. And guys, we're talking about, y'all know the kids that come into your classrooms here. There are kids that are coming in classrooms all over this city, all over these different districts, that have had trust broken in infancy. They've had trust broken through so many different experiences that are unimaginable. I cannot tell you some of the horror stories that I've heard in the counseling room with kids and their families. Trust is a must, and sometimes it takes longer with some kiddos than others. But if we let that rise as a value and a principle to the surface of permission leadership, then we're on the right track. We have a better chance of hitting that, right? The third principle is respect connects. Respect connects. I didn't do a slide for those because I was trying to minimize my words. I was trying to do more pictures. So hopefully I'll get a B from my tag team partner. So respect connects. And as Rhonda mentioned earlier, sometimes it's hard to really kind of put language to respect, but we kind of know what that is. I treat you like I want to be treated. It's just a basic do unto others as you want them to do unto you. And that is a connector. And you'd be surprised the number of kids that get consistently disrespected by adults. So the value for permission leadership is, as I build trust, I am connecting.
That's what I was wondering.
Is that the...
Is that what that is?
I'm sorry.
What's he doing? He's scratching his way.
Is he anywhere near me? Okay. Then he's fine. I know. He's in there. Girl, I was like, cool. No, wow. Thank you so much. Thank you for showing respect for me being up here and knowing that that would drive me crazy if I knew that was really a tarantula. Prioritizing kiddos, guys, it is a right now situation. Again, we talked about you guys are the CEOs of your classroom. You have the ability right now to make a difference. We don't have time to wait on the government to get themselves together or for these laws to pass that make sense to impact our kids in a different way so that we're not teaching to the test. We don't have time for that. You guys are the change makers, and leaders rise to the challenge. If we were not able to meet challenges, we wouldn't have some of the great leaders that we have today. I think of course, one of my favorite leaders, and many of you, I'm sure, is Dr. Martin Luther King. Thinking of the time and the environment that he had to live in and still try to create change. There were places that he couldn't even get into, but he was willing to impact that. We have a lot of challenges, and I continue to hear those from teachers, but I think you're a leader. Rise to the challenge in your classroom, and we need to do it now because our kiddos are worth it. We can't lose anymore. So, how do we influence? We influence in different ways. I like to use words that have some alliteration because I am attention deficit, so sometimes this helps me. But think of all these ways that you can influence kiddos in your classroom. Enthusiasm is a big one. Enthusiasm creates momentum. It's inspiring. People feed off of that. If you've ever been in thinking of that school, Sandy, that we were talking about earlier, where those kiddos are just sitting around and they're doing whatever. They're just looking like, hey, I'm just here and I'm waiting on the bell to ring. I wonder if those leaders are leading by enthusiasm, if they're influencing by enthusiasm. Probably not. So that's very important. Empathy, we already know. Being a cheerleader, somebody mentioned that earlier and share out. Being an encourager, that's another way that you connect and you're able to lead in your classroom. And being ethical, consistent, character. What you say, you do. Who you are in classroom is who you are outside the classroom. Really important to influence our little kiddos. Engaging is so critical because for relationships to develop, doesn't there have to be some level of engagement? I believe that there is tremendous transforming power in questions. Questions are like, they're the best, y'all, aren't they? Like, to get to know people, you can't just talk about all the stuff you know, make all the statements about what's going on in your world. Questions have power because what questions do is they convey respect. The fact that I ask you a question means that I respect that there's something unique about you, there's something valuable about you, and I want to connect with that. So questions convey respect. They also let people contribute. The only way that we are able to lead and to get people to come alongside us so we can take them somewhere is that they have to be a part of that contribution. And you guys do that so well. I've seen that on the tours. Momentous does that well. You let kids contribute because you've got questions up on your walls, which is great because it makes them think. They get to use their prefrontal. So that as they get older and they run up on challenges, then they're not trying to turn to you and go, oh, what did you say last time? No, they've been able to critically and analytically think through that challenge because they've been asked questions. I do a lot of counseling with adolescents and adults, and it does not surprise me when I talk to adolescents, particularly, it takes several sessions often just to get them to make eye contact. But I've had some of those kids tell me that they've never been asked certain things, like, I don't know. It's always an I don't know, because they've never been asked to think, what do you like about that? I don't know. Because everybody in the family's done that for them. There's power in questions, and it will cause something to rise up in those kids that is really important. That's our influence. Our influence is designed to build trust. And so what happens when trust is built? I know you guys get a lot of gifts. Christmas, what you get, Bath and Body Works cards. Y'all get apples like they show on the you don't really get apples, don't you? No.
It's
not
a very different environment.
Okay,
They
okay.
don't feel the need to shower their kids. What?
We get apples.
You get apples, so
Well, you don't get showered with.
no, so it's not. Well, you know, some
Moms aren't in competition to see who can get the best.
to get the best gift, because that does happen. Y'all know that happens at schools. And as therapists, we can't take certain gift amounts either. It's an ethics issue. But I would submit to you guys that one of the greatest gifts that you will ever get from a kiddo, from a parent even, is when they let you in. That is a gift, because that is a part of that person. It's a treasure to them. Especially when you're dealing with kiddos that have excessive levels of trauma. And these are kids that you worked with for a period of time. They don't let anybody in. Those are the kids that we saw in that Paper Tiger documentary that we watched the other day that's going to premiere next week. Kids that have had hard experiences, and you're just another person on the belt just to, yeah, I'll stalk you down. I'll make you quit. So when you achieve that trust level and they let you in, that is a gift to be celebrated, and you should celebrate that. So we also know that when trust is developed, trust can be broken because challenges are going to come up. I wonder if when those challenges come and when you have those challenging situations, Kimberly, where those kids and you're just like, I'm gonna make you're gonna like Miss Kimberly, and you're gonna, which is great. I mean, because you already are approaching with how you're gonna use that influence. But I wonder if we ask in those situations, what does their trust require of me? Because if we're gonna maintain safe relationships, we know challenges are gonna occur because they occur in every relationship. So when we have those discipline issues in class, I know restorative discipline and restorative justice is a big thing now for schools that they're really trying out. What does that kiddo's trust require of you? That may be something different than another kid because another kid's had a different relationship experience. But asking this question will help to allow us to be leaders in that situation that can get the best outcome and impact the greater good. So when trust is broken, I saw this and I thought this really impacted me. It's kind of like you crumble up this paper. And when you're trying to restore that relationship, it takes a little time. Sometimes there's a tear in it. I added that in because that happened, sorry. But you know what? It's really never quite the same. You can smooth it out, but it's really never the same. That's what happens with trust when it's broken. So our goal is that we want to be those permissional leaders that don't make withdrawals. But if in cases we do, we want to say, what is their trust going to require of me? It may require a lot. When all else fails, unconditional love. I heard that out here too. I'm not sure who said that. I don't have time to get into the details about the Free Hugs Project, but y'all go to freehugs.com, project.com. There's a guy who decided that there was too much unkindness and too much hate in the world. And so he decided to just start going and giving people hugs. Some of y'all nodding your head like you know him. He's been going to the Donald Trump rally, so pray for him. But yeah, so he's just been going and hugging people and just saying, I just want to give you some love. I just want to hug you. And just think about the impact that a hug has. There was one video where there was a girl that just started crying. He approached her and she just started crying because it was just so much stress in the atmosphere at those rallies. And she took his hug and she just cried. Just think about the impact that we can have with unconditional love. And I love this statement, when we lose our love, we lose our leverage. So when you can't like kiddos, you got to love on them, because if you don't love and if you're not building trust, you're going to lose that connection. And when you lose that connection, you're going to lose their potential. And when you lose that potential, we lose the opportunity to have young leaders that are going to impact our schools and impact our world. So we run up on roadblocks and barriers. What do you all think is the biggest barrier to permission leadership? Because it takes time to build relationship, right? What are some of the barriers that you think this is what we experience or what other educators may experience?
Just pressure from, to make kids meet a certain level in a certain amount of time. Because every flower is not going to bloom on the first day of spring.
Right.
And so that pressure to get it to bloom sometimes, even though you can personally know what's best for them, feeling like you want to get them there, I think for teachers can be a roadblock.
Big barrier, yeah.
Our school is blessed because our kids come and they stay for the most part. But I think most public schools deal with populations that are kind of in and out. And so your classroom at the beginning of the year is very different from what it looks like at the end of the year. And so that takes away that time.
Sure. Yeah. Big challenges.
Visited last week. They've got a class that she's had, how many?
54 or something
Yes.
already. This
She
year.
said only like 6 of the kids are the same kids.
That she had on the first day.
This was the school we're talking about, yeah. A lot of that transition,
Had
and
a chance to build a relationship.
that's right, transient, yeah. And we see that sometime on the clinical side. We're building a relationship with a client and then they no-show. And they no-show multiple sessions and we don't see them anymore. And so we have it really an expectation just on the clinical side that any level of intervention is a great intervention. So for the time that I've had them, I can start that relationship process that day. I can build trust on the today, just having met you and knowing that you have an issue with Wedgwoods and all that kind of stuff. You can start that. So there's a lot of pressure on y'all. One of the things that I hear frequently is the term superhero, right? Like, you guys are, teachers are superheroes. You guys do all this great work. And I really think, and I don't want to snatch anybody's cape off, so, like, may the force be with you if that's you, and do your thing, boo. But I'm just thinking, most days you don't feel super. And to build relationships with people takes time, and especially with the kiddos of our day who've experienced, many of them, 4 out of 10 ACEs, or are experiencing significant health issues just because they're not eating. All these different kinds of things that we deal with. You don't always feel super, and it's not a heroic effort from the standpoint you can swoop in and fix it and swoop out. No, you have to earn your leadership every day. Every day you're on. Like, you don't get to check out as a teacher. No matter what you do and where you go, you're always on. And you have to earn your leadership with kids. They don't give you a day off to not be the leader and you can go and not do all the things that they expect for you to do. So yeah, we have to earn our leadership every day. These are a couple of quotes that I love. You guys know this one on the far right side. Is that right? To my right? Yes. But I love this quote. Dr. Seuss is really smart. I wonder whose school he went to. Y'all's class, I love him. Or this statement, today I'm going to behave as if this is the day I'll be remembered. It's like tomorrow's not even in the rotation yet, because all I have is today. And guess what? That kid may be the kid of this school that transitions out. And I had an opportunity, because I'm a leader, to influence that kid while they were in my classroom. Okay, just for those who, I'm over my time 4 minutes, so I'm getting to the end. This is for those of you, I'm sorry that it's, hopefully you can read that, but we know that there is a connection when there is a link to personal relationship and to outcomes. We already know that that happens. And I love this last statement. An enthusiastic teacher has the ability to be very influential, that our enthusiasm is inspiring, and that the fact that we even strategically and intentionally work to build relationships has a significant impact on the kids' outcomes. That's a big sell to the teachers that say, I don't have time. Yes, you do. You have to value them to prioritize it. You can prioritize simple things. Just being respectful doesn't mean you got to take 30 minutes out of the day and sit with a kid, but it may mean that for another kid. So there is a tremendous connection between how we engage and how we connect with our leadership. Okay, last thing, the practices of permission leadership. So we talked about the whys, we talked about the whats, and now we talk about the ways, which are the strategies. I'm not going to put any specifics to this. This is kind of like the last slide. This is my rhyme slide because it helps me kind of remember. When I went through it, I was thinking, oh, that sounded like a little Jesse Jackson kind of thing or something. I thought, I'm going to switch that up. But evaluate self. These are strategies that are generic, and you guys can put a little color to them as you talk with each other, or maybe as you reflect a little bit later. The biggest thing that is so critical in permission leadership and even attachment-based teaching, which I'm sure you guys have heard, I don't know if you're reading the book, right? Or you will end up reading the book, right, at some point, is to know you, to know your history, to know your own personality, to know what your leadership style is, to be able to pick between that position and that permission, to kind of know what your bents are, what your triggers are. Because if you're going to lead your classroom into safe relationship, you have to be aware of who you are in that process. And leadership is a process. It's not a position. And it's so much about who we are that happens in that classroom. Initiate. Initiate takes energy and effort. You guys are leaders, and you set the tone for what happens in your room. You set the tone with those kids. So if there's something that's happened in your room, it shouldn't be that the kiddos have to get together and keep talking about it for days and days and it goes unaddressed. You initiate as the leader to correct, to set the temperature, to raise it up. If there needs to be more enthusiasm, if you see that there needs to be more connection, you lead out in that. Cultivate. Of course, relationships have to be cultivated. And I think that's one sometimes that in the busyness of our days and in the busyness of life, we don't always think about how do I nurture what I've already invested. So when you make that connection with the kid, you can't just leave them hanging at the place where you connected, you got to be able to reconnect. And it's something just as simple as if you talked about their soccer game, find out how their season went a few weeks later. Find out if they're thinking about another sport activity for the next year. It's constantly cultivating, and y'all, that's why we can't do it in a superhero framework, because this is stuff that takes painstaking time, but the benefits are immeasurable and exponential. Appreciate goes without saying, and then imitate. Imitate simply means that I identify somebody who is really strong at being a relational leader, a permission-based leader, and I talk with them, and I meet up with them, I watch them, I allow them to help and shape and mold me, because your kiddos are only going to be as strong as you are as a leader. So if your leadership is not strong, those kiddos' potential will have limits to it. But the more that you grow, the more that you learn how to connect, the more that you're able to tap into the greatness in those kiddos, because there is in all of them. There's greatness in all of them. Sometimes it's hidden behind a lot of junk, a lot of crazy behaviors, and kids are going to test you. You're teachers and you give tests. But sometimes teachers aren't real good at taking tests. And a kid's behavior is a great way to test you, and you want to pass those tests. So linking up with people who have experience and who've really shown some great progress and success in this area. Okay, so specific ways that you can do that, you can talk about that later. Now, what I want to do is for you guys to take a few minutes at your tables and just talk about what you feel like is one particular area of leadership that you think you can take up to the next level. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pass out hats to everybody. You probably don't want this pink one, right? I have a hat for everybody, and I have...
I want the pink.
You want the pink one?
I want to be limited.
You can pick from these colors. And I'm going to pass out a hat to everybody and some fabric markers, and we've got some Sharpies. And because of the fact that I want you guys to remember that you always have your leader hat on, you're going to get a hat and you're going to be able to write on here all of the leadership characteristics that you want to aspire to or that you already have. And this is your hat that you can wear to the classroom every day to remind you that yes, you're a teacher, but you're always a leader, and use your leadership approach to build safe relationships with your kids. Okay? Thanks for letting me share. We'll pass out a little bit. All right, let's see.